Evie Pig arrived to take over the spotlight in the show, and maybe Peppa's sister will even get her own cartoon spin-off someday. Are you ready to see all of Evie's growth over the next few years? Most important, one thing you can be sure of is that Evie is definitely going to get her own show in the future. Yes, that's going to happen. Peppa's sister showed up to take the lead role, and we have the proof. Let's remember that in Peppa's world, nothing as big as the birth of this new little piglet has ever happened before. She was announced on British television, but for that to happen, the show had to break a very important rule. Mummy Pig actually talked to someone from the real world, and that means from now on the series confirmed that the story takes place in our reality. Another thing that happened is that time finally moved forward in the show, and anyone who watches the cartoon knows that had never happened. But when Mummy Pig's pregnancy was announced, we had the episode about discovering Evie's gender and then the birth episode. In other words, months went by telling the same story. Time in the show is no longer frozen. So you need to know that Evie is becoming the most important character in the whole series. It's not hard at all to imagine that this little piglet is going to end up with her own show in the next episodes. Luckily, you can count on our channel to tell you all about the future of the series. Go ahead and get your popcorn ready, because another Cinewave video is starting now! Popular. Of course, the main character of the cartoon is Peppa Pig, and that's more important to say than fans might realize. If it weren't for that little pig, the show wouldn't even be famous. And yes, Peppa is very special, but we're seeing now that something different is happening. Fans are starting to like Evie way more than our main star, but is that just because she's still new? We'll talk more about that in a bit, but until then, let's take a look at what's happening right now. On Peppa Pig's official website, Evie got her own official song. Besides appearing on TV and being born in a super fancy, expensive hospital in London, if you pay close attention to news about this show, you'll see there's a lot being said about Evie's future, which means this little piglet showed up to take on a much bigger role than you might think. That's already happened with other shows. A good example is the success of Bluey, the cartoon about the blue heeler pup who's the main character, but everyone knows Bandit Heeler is actually the one with the biggest fan base. In Peppa Pig, the same thing is happening between the sisters. Peppa is still the star, but everyone's gonna end up liking Evie more than any other character. But what do you think about that? Travel. Evie is so popular that a lot of people think there's no space for her next to her sister. But hold on, how can you fix that problem? Easy. How about Evie going to live with Aunt Dottie in the United States? Let's think this through, because it's a little tricky to explain. If Evie is so popular, then of course fans will want to see more episodes with her, right? But the cartoon is about Peppa's adventures, so one way to solve that is by creating a new series with this new little piglet as the main character. If Evie moves to the United States with Aunt Dottie, she'll get to live out all the stories fans want to see, but without taking away Peppa's spotlight in this universe. That way, we'd have the best of both sisters without taking space away from either one. But hold on, Evie is just a baby, right? How could she travel to America? We're gonna answer that for you right now. Do you remember how Evie's birth broke the frozen time rule? Now there's nothing stopping this little piglet from growing up super fast. Honestly, that's going to be really necessary. If Evie is a baby, then she still can't play with her siblings. She can't run or jump in muddy puddles like Peppa and George do. She also can't ride a bike or play on the town playground. That means if Evie doesn't grow up fast, her character will just stay stuck inside the house, and in the end, there'd be no point in her even existing. When Evie grows up in the show, it's very possible she'll go live with Aunt Dottie in the US, because then there's a reason to create a series with Evie as the lead. Plus, it shows off a new setting. One clue that this might happen is the relationship between Mummy Pig and her sister. We never knew Aunt Dottie was related to Peppa's mom, and in the time capsule episode, it shows a picture of Mummy Pig as a child, but there's no clue that she had a sister. That proves Dottie must have left home super early, and maybe the same thing will happen with Evie. Could this little piglet leave her family behind? And would you like to travel with Evie? Comment with #Evie so we can meet ya. Evie. Maybe one of your questions is, why does Evie even exist? Yes, there's a reason why the show's creators decided to introduce this new character, and we're gonna show you all those reasons right now. 1. The most die-hard Peppa Pig fans don't like to admit it, but the truth is the cartoon hasn't brought a ton of new stuff since the series first started. If you don't believe it, let's make a list of what big news came out over the last few years. Madam Cow and Mr. Bull getting married, Aunt Dottie showing up in the Thanksgiving episode, and now Evie's birth. Peppa Pig has been on the air for over 20 years, so this cartoon needs to bring in new things if it wants to keep fans' attention. The second reason for Evie to exist is actually another show that up until now had nothing to do with Peppa's world. Bluey, the cartoon about the blue puppy. Anyone who follows the channel knows that in Bluey's world, new characters keep arriving, and the Peppa Pig creators realize that fans are loving that. You probably know that anyone who watches the Piglet show is probably a Bluey fan too, and if both cartoons add more characters, then we'll get more special episodes with brand new stories. EVIE exists because the creators want to make you happy. So tell us, are you happy? Growth. But if Evie is going to grow up so much on the show, we need to understand how her development will play out in the next episodes. If you had to pick, would Evie start walking before talking, or the other way around? In the real world, it's pretty common for newborns to take their first steps before they start talking. We can imagine that Evie's next milestone will be the episode where she learns how to walk, and we know exactly how that could happen. It all starts on a morning after a heavy rain, when the pig family's yard is full of muddy puddles. Peppa and George love to play outside whenever that happens. But since Evie is still a baby, she can't join in on the fun. That's exactly why the new little piglet is going to get really sad and try to take her first steps. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that most babies learn to walk because they want to reach something far away? Evie is going to look out the window at her siblings jumping in the mud, and that's what will motivate her to start walking. When the little piglet manages to get into the yard, Peppa will realize that her new sister is finally walking, and then the narrator will announce, Evie has learned to walk. But the little piglet will soon fall to the ground, and all the characters will laugh and just jump into the mud too. Anyone who watches the show knows that in Peppa's Town, everyone loves to end a story by falling and laughing. That episode is going to be hilarious, don't you think? Talking. If Evie's next big milestone is learning to walk, then the one after that has to be learning to talk. And we also know how that could happen. Peppa's first word was mama, and George's was dinosaur. But what about the episode where Evie learns to talk? In the episode The Olden Days, we found out it was Grandpa Pig and Grandma Pig who gave George Mr. Dinosaur as a gift. It wasn't on that day that the little pig learned to talk, but that gift is what made him try to start using words. If Evie also gets a favorite toy the same way her brother did, it's possible she'll spend so much time with it that she'll end up using that toy's name as her first word. There's another possibility. George, over the last few years, has basically only used one word. And you know what that is, right? He says dinosaur more than anything else. That means Evie is going to hear dinosaur so many times that it's totally possible she'll end up copying her brother and saying the exact same thing. Another possibility is that Evie might end up saying daddy as her first word. That's because Peppa's dad always thought his daughter had said his name first, but that wasn't true. We found that out in the episode Baby Alexander, and when Mummy Pig told him he was wrong, he was really sad. So it's very possible the show will try to be fair to him and have Evie say daddy before anything else. Which option do you like better? Will Evie say dinosaur or daddy? Go ahead and make your choice. You know what else you should pick? Subscribing to the channel and turning on the notification bell. School. After Evie is walking and talking, it means it's time for this little piglet to go to Madame Gazelle's school. But wait, will she be in Peppa's class? Let's think about it. If George, who is 2 years old, is in the same class as his older sister who is 4, what exactly is Evie going to learn? We can imagine Peppa started school when she was the same age George is now, but if that's true, then there's a question. What was Madame Gazelle teaching Peppa back then that she didn't teach George? Another option is that the older kids are getting repeat lessons right alongside the younger ones. If Evie goes to Madame Gazelle's school, then this little piglet will probably have to learn how to read, write, and draw faster than the other kids, and we already explained why. She needs to grow up quickly to be able to join in the fun with her siblings and her family. One thing that's important to think about is that Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig have to decide whether they'll leave their new daughter with a vampire. We know Madame Gazelle has never done anything bad to the kids, but it's still kinda weird to think that the grown-ups in town have never noticed her true identity. But that's a story for another day. Friends. Evie isn't going to be alone on this adventure. She needs to make friends, and everyone already knows who they're going to be. Peppa has Susie Sheep, Rebecca Rabbit, and Emily Elephant as her best friends, while George has Edmund and Richard. As for Evie, we know her best friends will be baby Alexander, who is her cousin and the same age, and of course Rebecca Rabbit's younger siblings, the twins Rose and Robbie, who are babies too. These 4 friends are going to be the new characters who should go on lots of adventures in the upcoming episodes. So get ready to stick with us so we can show you everything. Until that day comes, we've picked out 2 more videos for everyone to enjoy. We'll see you in the next video. See you soon!